All right, there are no candles this time. Last service, the candle fell over at the beginning of the sermon. It was terrifying. So, off to a good start already, and I haven't even started. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Carter Leer. I'm one of the seminarians here. A little bit about me. I am a former organist. I am from the Diocese of Lexington in Lexington, Kentucky. And I apologize to all the UT fans here this morning, but I am in a very good mood because Kentucky beat Florida last night. As a senior at Seminary of the Southwest and a seminarian here, I am very excited about the year to come, but I have a confession to make. The idea of writing sermons terrifies me. I spent most of the past 2 weeks moving between writing, scrapping, and of course, procrastinating over what I was going to share with you all today. After 2 years, you'd think that after 2 years of seminary, the words would just be flowing out right now with the richest and most powerful theological reflections imaginable. Turns out that is not the case. I kept asking myself why I felt foolish every time I wrote something down. I literally said foolish. You can check the text with my wife, Lucy. I spent so much time focusing on how I might find something to engage every single one of you here today about how we are all lost sheep at one time or another, and my brain just couldn't handle it. Turns out this parable of the lost sheep happens in our mind as well as in communities we place ourselves in. So, after being told to take a breath, meditate, and try again, this is where I landed. And I hope that you'll do me the honor of pausing in the busyness of your own lives to meditate and see what God might be pointing you to today. We spend a lot of time and energy sometimes trying to find God, find the right community, do the right thing to fit in or be accepted, say the right words. But the truth is that sometimes we don't have to try so hard for God to find us. The parables Jesus tells today show us that God will always search us out. I've realized, for myself at least, that parables like this, I always want to focus on the lost sheep. Maybe that's because I know I'm a sinner, or that preaching a sermon on how we are all lost sheep is the way I'm going to keep you engaged for the longest amount of time. Or maybe I'm just incredibly vain and feel the need to place myself in the center of every parable that comes down the lane. The point is, when I have read this story in the past, I have always seen it through the lens of the lost sheep. And this week, I found myself reflecting on something else. So today, I want to talk about all of the other sheep. The ones who aren't lost, who stuck together, who came back to the shepherd. Now, it is not lost on me that as I talk to you this morning, we are a gathered community. And if you feel like a lost sheep this morning, please know that you are welcome here, and I assure you of God's promise to find you. But for others, this may be your safe space, your family. And if it isn't, I would ask you to imagine a place that is. Many of us have spaces and people with whom we feel completely at home, safe, loved, and known. Like those other sheep, we know where we are supposed to be and what we are supposed to do. We know the rules and the expectations. Sometimes we might not be aware that we are operating in such a safe space because it's second nature to us. We become blind to those who operate or think outside of that space. For those of us who feel that way, I want us to think about who exists outside of your group. Who is looking from the outside in? How might we join with God in looking after those lost sheep? In every community, group, club, there are those who exist within and those without, those who belong and those on the margins. It should be no surprise to us that God tells us multiple times throughout the scriptures that we are to care for the marginalized, the oppressed. But sometimes we have a hard time recognizing who those people might be in our lives because they don't fit within our carefully drawn lines. In our story today, we don't know if all the other sheep knew that there was one missing, or if they were just oblivious, just doing sheep things, eating grass, baaing, I confess I don't really know what sheep do, but you get my point. Perhaps the others in your community don't see a problem with exclusivity. Perhaps they encourage it. Perhaps they are happy to keep doing what people do. Perhaps they are content to stay comfortable. But I think you'll agree that the life that Jesus led and the example he set was far from comfortable. In fact, I think in telling this story to the religious leaders of the day, Jesus was calling out their judgment and their complacency. So, how might we disrupt our comfortable? Let's think about who might be on the margins of our lives. Who seems a little lost? Who can we reach out to? Someone at work, maybe? A fringe member of the friend group? Someone who is sitting in a pew alone? Though my wife would tell me that sometimes introverts just like sitting alone. So this is my official warning to you all not to pounce on someone after the service just because they're sitting alone. Is there that one family member with different political views? A friend who drinks a little more than the rest of you? Or is it the beggar on the street that you see each day on your way to work? These are the situations that we all come into contact with each day, and that makes us uncomfortable and threatens to burst our bubble of safety. But this story of the shepherd going out of his way to find the lost sheep should inspire us to do the same, to put comfort aside and look to the margins. This brings me back to my own lost sheep mentality because, believe it or not, I often feel outside of the bubble of church. Now, I know that must sound rich coming from a young-ish white male who is in seminary and who is preaching his theological opinions at you. But hear me out. My way of understanding the world and theology often differs from that of my classmates. I spend a lot of time asking them questions and questioning myself rather than looking for answers. That is in large part because my main support group is a group of guys I've known for years and who all support me in the path that I'm headed on, but who happen to not identify with any specific faith. I hear their voices in my head a lot of the time and often feel like I'm stuck straddling two worlds, never fitting into either and never feeling all that comfortable about bringing those worlds together. However, what I appreciate most about their voices and their degree of separation from church life is that it reminds me that there are plenty of others on the margins who aren't being reached or who are being dismissed because they don't live by the rules or lifestyles that we do. Some of my best theological conversations have been with people who haven't darkened the door of a church in years, but their curiosity and the potential to belong to a community is just as enticing as our safety within our own bubble. Those who are feeling a little lost are not always obvious, and in order to bring people into our community, we often have to make the margins of that community wider. So what do we do with that? For me, it is to set more spaces at the table, to find new ways of building or growing ministries, and welcoming all, regardless of their background, identity, or faith. We can't expect people to fit in if you don't make space for them. Like many of Jesus' parables, this little story packs a punch, and the more you meditate on it, the more it brings to light. As I've shared with you, it's possible to relate to both the lost sheep and the herd. But if I could leave you with just a few things this morning, it would be this. 1, God has promised they will find you. Let them. 2, a challenge. This week, look for where the lost sheep are in your lives, and instead of ignoring them, try and see if you can expand your community and give them a place where they might fit. And finally, please carry these words by the poet Hafez to those who you might encounter. I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. Amen.